Welcome to Bartelle's Money Talk. Do you want to know what financial freedom looks like? You're going to enjoy my guest today. Monica, thank you so much for being here with me. Please introduce yourself and tell us all about you.
Okay, well, I bore me, but all right. So my name is Monica Kaufman. I'm a certified financial planner. I've been doing this for a long time. And back during, or right the year before the shutdown, really sort of became aware that the environment was changing, AI was growing, and most people were not going to get in front of a financial advisor. And I thought, okay, that's a strange thing. And then during the shutdown, the literature has always said that there's a huge percentage of the population that just doesn't know how to use the financial system. And we've all inherited from the culture and from our families and sometimes from trauma, we've all inherited a set of habits and systems that don't serve us. So these are patterns that are well entrenched. And I watch this go on with people who have very high incomes, very high educations. And you would think that this would not be the case, but it is. And I realize it's like, okay, we need to shift this. The literature says it's been going on for almost 5 generations. So I made a decision. I wanted to be part of the solution and not part of the problem. Left where I was, went to Harmony Asset Management, which is a fiduciary asset manager. I'm director of financial planning there, and I had the time and space to build out my program. So that's why I am where I am.
Wonderful. And so based on what you just said, we did some research. And what you found is 80% of our population. Monica, that's a lot.
It is. And it's nobody's fault. It's been going on for a very long time. Okay. So because it's been going on for a very long time, everybody needs to take a breath and say, okay, it's no one's fault and it's everyone's fault. The big thing is not what happened in the past. It's about what do we do from today forward. Right. And what I want to do, and the reason why I'm here is I want people to understand, yes, they can master the system. They can use it to build out what they want. They can use that to build out the life they want. I've seen people with modest incomes do it, okay? I've seen people with very high incomes not do it. It's a choice. Ooh. So I want to put the power back in your hands so that you feel comfortable exercising it and using it for you and the people you love.
And I am so glad that's what you do. And so your message, like it grabbed me because of the life that we may live or the people that we associate with, we take so many things for granted. But what you found is there's such a large population of our people in our culture that are financially illiterate. They don't know how to use the system. And you even mentioned that some of us, we were blessed with parents that taught us how to do it. We might have somebody that knows how to read and understand the financial world and they do it. But then what happens to the ones that don't have that?
That's part of it. And there's also a shame factor that comes in. So when you're looking at this and you say, why am I not doing better with this? Or I don't know this and I feel like I should, is there an embarrassment? Are you willing to actually show this to your kids? And so that's part of the challenge too. And there's no reason for shame. I mean, if this has been going on for a long time, and I've seen people, without giving out names, with tremendous educations where you would not think that they would have an issue. And they do. And sometimes it's even, let's put it this way, people may know what they need to do to lose weight. That doesn't mean they do it.
That's right.
Okay. And so the question is, if you know something and you don't act on it, okay, so that's a little bit of a difference. But one of the other problems that we have is that when we're in a culture and we're surrounded by people who are sending us the message and you want to be a part of it, you want to be with people and you make decisions along the way, those don't necessarily serve your long-term interests. I'll give you an example. I was mentoring a young advisor and he was about to get engaged, super excited. And he and his then fiance, now wife, wanted to buy their first house. And he looked at this and said, how do I do this?
Oh, wow.
And I looked at him and I said, what's the problem? He said, they were spending too much money. Okay, so where was the money going? And it was going to entertainment with his friends. So he and his friends, as a couple, okay, they had a lot of people in the same position. And they were all doing the same thing. They were all making that transition in their lifetimes. And they were spending time at restaurants and bars. And I said, okay, scale back a little bit. What if you could get them to meet, and every week, instead of going out to a restaurant or a bar, you would meet at somebody's place, somebody's apartment, somebody's home. And everybody brings something to eat or bring something to drink. You will spend less than buying 2 adult beverages someplace. And he said, I said, why don't you bring up that idea? Maybe you all will go out to a restaurant once every 2 months or so.
Right.
But you'll cut back on the expenditures. Well, all of them were actually happy to have the conversation that he brought it up, and they did it, and they all eventually got to where they wanted to go. So the other piece that you have to do is have the courage to stand up and say, "Hey, I need to make a shift, and here's why.
Mhm.
And you matter to me. Let's find another way to do this that is not financially destructive." One of the things that Stanley, the man who wrote The Millionaire Mind, said is that most of the people who are financially successful, okay, who have made money, who have turned it into wealth, who have built out their financial independence, those people have said, the best things in life really don't cost a lot.
Wow.
Okay, so spending time with friends, spending time with family, being a part of the community, going to events, that is not horribly expensive. How much are we wasting?
How much? A lot.
A lot. I'm going to admit it. I have my bad habit too. I have a Starbucks addiction. I'll freely admit that. Not proud. Okay. Not proud at all, but it's, you were not expected to be perfect. The question is, can we choose progress over perfection?
I like that thought. Progress over perfection.
Right.
I much rather progress.
Mm-hmm.
That's the wise choice.
Right, because you're never going to get to perfection. So are you just going to choose to stay where you are? That's
Right.
not a great place to be either.
No, it's not. And then, like, piggybacking off of that, you mentioned like a vulnerable part of our population. Can you discuss that a little bit? Because, Monica, what I've seen too is that sometimes people get comfortable in their financial situation, but they have the power to do better. So can you talk about that a little bit? Because somebody might need to have that shield taken off their eyes so that they can realize that they are in a vulnerable situation.
Well, here's the question that I would have. Okay. The average American doesn't have an emergency fund.
Wow.
So the emergency fund, they used to talk about it being 3 to 6 months, right?
Mm-hmm.
Truth be told, there aren't any hard and fast rules. So I've seen people who were brought in from abroad to do particular projects. They already had their ticket to go home. They had money. They had been sending money back home. They were living a very sparse life because they weren't here for a very long time. Did they really need 3 months in cash? The answer was probably not. Okay.
Right.
But I've also seen people who are like, oh, I'm going to have children. I'm approaching retirement. There are times when you need to have more. All right, fine. But the average American doesn't have enough money to cover an unforeseen bill of $1,000 or less. So you think about that. It's like, I needed to buy 4 tires. That was $1,200.
And we don't have it.
And most Americans don't have it. What do you do? And so you think about this. It's like, how do you build up that emergency fund? How do you do that? And then you have people who have debt at the same time. And they're like, oh, I just want to pay off the debt and not build up the emergency fund. It's like, okay, so what happens if something happens to your income and you're not able to work, whatever the situation is, and you don't have that emergency fund to cushion you? You're going to go back into debt if you can.
Right. So
you pay down the debt, but these two things are the two pillars upon which you have to build this out. That's the foundation. And a lot of people want to go from the garage all the way up to the penthouse immediately.
That's right.
It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. It's funny, and I think we mentioned this before. I like to use the physical fitness rubric for people. Okay? The first way we as people, as individual human beings, interface with the world and start acting out agency, let's call it that, is our physical fitness. We learn to master our bodies. And then we are interacting with the people who love us, who are taking care of us, and we develop our emotional and social selves. But the first thing is with the body. And I heard a trainer from iFit discuss this. He said that there's a rubric, there's an easy way to look at this. You start off with function, all right? Do the individual parts of the body work? Then you get to health, when everything works well together. And then after that, you get to fitness. Fitness means you're able to carry the load. So when you're 6 months old, that may mean rolling and sitting up.
Right.
When you're 3 years old, that may be climbing the banister the wrong way. Okay. But that's the way to look at that. And then performance is when you can go beyond carrying the load. In the financial world and the realm, function. Does each part of your financial life work the way you need it to work? Does it work well together? Does everything flow? Fitness on that, for me, the way I like to define it is when you're paying all your bills and funding your goals. And then performance is when you go beyond that. Now, so that's on that fitness rubric. What does that mean? The other piece is, what is financial independence or freedom? Income is not the same thing as wealth. Wealth pays you whether you work or whether you don't.
That's right.
Okay, so you hit the financial independence point or that freedom point When you have enough wealth built up underneath you, generating enough income so that if you work or if you don't, it doesn't matter. You can still at least meet your financial health point or fitness point. You can pay and fund your bills and your goals.
That is so powerful. Wealth and income, people, are not the same
Correct.
thing.
They are not the
And
same.
a
And
lot,
that's really the first thing people have to learn.
that's a
Okay.
big deal.
It is a big deal. And so
Hmm.
what people need to understand is, and I've seen this, I've seen people with modest incomes. I saw this one couple, first time I really saw the Millionaire Next Door story from that book as real was I was at Merrill Lynch and I had two referrals come in. One was a doctor who had had a stroke and he had children and a wife, beautiful family. He had not built up wealth. They had always lived well. Look, residents and doctors go through hell, and he wanted to live a normal life. He didn't anticipate having a stroke. Thank God he had disability insurance. It replaced his income, his base income. If he hadn't have had that, there would have been a problem. Okay. That would have been a real problem. But I saw another couple, middle class. She was a paralegal. He had owned some businesses. They had a daughter who was seriously disabled. They turned around. When she was born, they sold a couple of businesses that they had. They'd never really earned a lot of money. I think roughly $110,000 a year was the maximum they'd earned. They always lived off one income, saved and invested the other.
Oh,
When they retired in their 50s, there was an awful lot of money underneath them. An awful lot.
wow. And they
Okay.
have a modest income.
Right. They did it. Any money they inherited, there were some small pieces that came in. I mean, they were real money, but not huge.
Hmm.
They turned around and they invested. They understood the system. They knew it. They understood investments. They understood estate planning. Every 5 years, their trust was reviewed. Everything was updated. They had it organized, meticulous. Everything that needed to be done for their daughter who needed the help because she was profoundly disabled was taken care of. These were the literal model citizens of financial independence. They made that decision.
Oh, like my husband today is, it takes a lot to get me quiet. But I'm like, I'm just picturing this family because they made a decision. It changed their lives. Like if
Correct.
when they die, they don't have to worry about their daughter because they made the decision. They
Correct.
stuck to that decision and they were able to retire in their 50s.
Yes, actually, and it wasn't even a voluntary decision for both of them at the same time. And as much as they wanted to go back to work, they didn't have to.
That's
There
a
was no
good feeling.
panic. There was no panic. There was no concern. It was like, we want to go back to work. Okay, let's find something. But it was not like there was pressure.
Right. And that financial pressure that you just mentioned
Stress.
can cause so much stress. Monica, people have committed suicide
Yeah.
due to financial pressure.
Right. And that's the whole thing. It's like, look, money is nothing more than a set of tools in your hands. What I say to people is it's there for you to take care of yourself and for the people you love, period. It's not something to worship. It's not something, it's not, you get to decide how you use it. What do you want to build with it? And I'll say to people, look, what do you want to build with the money, with the tools in your hands? Don't make it any more complicated than this. It doesn't have to be.
Monica, and so you can't leave that because there are so many people that don't look at money as a tool. And it may be because they struggled in their childhood. It could be because maybe a spouse left them completely broke.
Oh,
If you can
absolutely.
just, yes, if you can just talk a little bit and encourage people and teach them that money is a tool, we can't allow it to control us so much that we're not enjoying life at the same time because it is a tool. But tell us how to operate with money as if it is a tool.
Well, I ask people to start getting super strategic. Okay. I don't use the term budget. I know that sounds like semantics. I say strategic spending plan. What are you going to do with your tools? If you're building out what you want, what would it take to get you there? Okay. I literally will start with, I want you to dream. Tell me what you want your life to look like in 5 years, in 2 years, in 1 year. Let's work backwards and build. And sometimes people look at me like I've sprouted horns. They're like, what are you talking about? I want you to dream. I want you to tell me what you want your life to look like. Because if you can't envision that, I can't get you there.
Wow.
Okay.
And you can't.
And that's the whole piece. It's like, first of all, you cannot go anywhere that your mind has not gone before you.
Ooh,
So
say that again.
you cannot go anywhere that your mind has not gone before you. So My journey was a little bit more complicated than most. My husband has battled chronic depression for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
And because of his struggles, I was introduced to cognitive behavioral therapy. Mm-hmm. He had to do it, and I saw the power of it. And the idea behind it is, I don't want to say this like this, but I'll say it. You can take custody of the mind. What do I mean by that? You take ownership for your thoughts. If you have a thought, you write it down, and you have to assess it. Use that mind to say, where's the distortion in the thinking? What's wrong here? What's right? Mm-hmm. Where does this come from? How do I flip this around? How do I look at it from another perspective? Because how you think about something determines to a large extent how you feel. It becomes a biofeedback loop. And so if you want to shift that, you shift the thoughts. And unfortunately, I also believe that belief overrides all of this. Mm-hmm. So you have to believe that you were created to be free. What does free mean? It means responsible. Woo. So I have a spiritual side to me. I know this sounds a little bit crazy. You don't necessarily want that from your financial person, but you were created to be responsible. And responsible means you choose your response. I can't control what the stock market does, but I can control how I manage my money and how it applies other people. I can't control what happens if another car driver hits me. I can control my insurance. I can control my behavior, okay? I choose to exercise agency. So one of the questions I'll ask people to do, or one of the affirmations is, I ask myself, where can I take one step forward today? Where do I have agency that I can act today to get closer to my goals? It doesn't have to be a big step. Make it small.
Right.
And sometimes people don't have enough of the system that they're afraid. I mean, my parents got divorced when I was 6, and I tell the story all the time. And I don't know if my mother knows I tell the story, but anyways, so my mother was born in 1938, and she was born, her parents really had a rough time because of the Depression, very rough time. And she was born and she lived on the wrong side of the tracks in her city. The parents had enough money to pay for her brother's school clothes and shoes, not enough for her. She got her first job between 2nd and 3rd grade. Like, who hires a kid that young? Right. But somebody must have seen her, saw how hard she was working, and said, okay, I'll find a way to keep her busy and she'll do things for me. And so she did that at the school, and that's how she had enough money for school clothes and shoes. And so she put herself through school. She went to what became Case Western Reserve University. She was a scholarship student. And at that time, when you would go into the math department to study, or to be a math major, they would make you had to go through the first year and then test at the end of it to be accepted in as a math major. This is from what I understand. My mother, you had to be invited in to a TA, a teaching assistant section where you would get additional help. My mother wasn't invited in by any of them, okay? So when she took that test and she got the highest score, it was published in the newspaper. And every year that the person who got the highest score, it was published. It was a very big deal. And it was a vindication for her, okay? So she graduated, she married my dad, and years later, with 4 kids, they got divorced.
Whoa.
So all of my mother's financial fears from her childhood came crashing down on her. And I lived with that. I was 6.5 years old when that happened. And my mother had to find ways to cope, and my mother had to find ways to rebuild. And it was not easy for her.
Not with 4 children. Oh.
Okay. And I'm the youngest of 4. But I mean, yeah, that was all part of it. But the whole point of what I'm saying is I understand some of this stuff, and I understand how it affected me. Like, all of a sudden, like, if I wanted shoes, my grandparents had to buy me shoes.
You remember that?
Oh, I remember that. Okay. I absolutely remember that. And I'll be honest, I had the greatest grandparents on earth, both sets, so that's okay. But you understand my point.
Oh, yes,
okay?
I do.
So we are all products of our environment. We are all products of all of that. So my mother didn't have certain exposures to the financial world that my father did. And so learning that also became an issue. And so that was an issue too. I mean, it's really interesting. And when my mother got remarried, she married a great guy. They've been married now for 37.5 years.
Wow. Got the right one.
For a second marriage, that's pretty amazing. And again, they had to make that work, and they had very direct conversations about what they wanted, how they wanted, and they did it pretty, directly, and they came to a point of understanding between the two of them. Very, very, very grounded, but it was a function of what both of them had gone through before. So I tend to think that the more you run to the adversity, a lot of people tend to avoid it because it's scary and because it means something about them. It's like, no, if you didn't know, okay, what's Maya Angelou's statement? When you know better, you'll do better.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, all right. So you didn't know. You learned the hard way. We all do. We're going to make mistakes. You get back up. You learn from it. You move on. That makes you human.
It does. Real human.
Right. And so here's the way I look at it. It is no different than the car that I use as a tool. The car is not a status symbol. It is a depreciating asset.
That's right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the funny thing is, I don't know about you, I find that the people who have the most expensive cars on the lot are usually the ones with the least amount of money.
That's what I found. And look, and reading The Millionaire Next Door, I know that to be true. And so many people, Americans, they want the status with the car, but they're broke.
Right. And so the question is, it's a tool, all right? It's like a washing machine with wheels and steel around it, hopefully. And that's the problem. It's a tool.
Mm-hmm. It is.
What do you care?
Right. What do you care? So it's almost like if they can look at their money as a tool instead of it controlling them and everything that they do, people will approach how they manage their money differently instead of allowing their money to control them.
That's part of it. And then the other part is when you stop trying to impress other people, you stop caring about what they think. Don't you release a lot of pressure there? Start thinking about yourself and feeding your own goals and taking care of yourself and your family and the people you care about. Doesn't that matter more than what some stranger thinks about you because of the car you drive?
Life changing. Life changing. Monica, this has got to make someone take a stop and think, because we are so caught up in the status quo. We're so caught up in trying to impress people that we forget the things that matter. And what you're saying, that's what matters.
Right. And you know, I've seen people with a tremendous amount of money who do not drive the cars you would think. I've seen people, you know, that couple that had millions. I remember talking to my assistant at the time. She looked at me and said, you would never think they live in the neighborhood they do. And I said, the reason why they have is because they live in the neighborhood they do. And most of my clients, my people, tend to be very grounded. Most of them have gone through a period where it's been a wake-up call and they've had a hard transition where they've had to rebuild on something, whether it's divorce or learning a new career, whatever it's been. Life has happened. So all of a sudden they stop and think, what really matters? So yeah, they want their house to be nice and comfortable, but it's not there to impress other people. How many people do you know of who have big, beautiful houses on the outside and they're empty and there's no furniture on the inside?
Too many.
Right. So the big thing is we've inherited a lot of thoughts about money and a lot of thoughts about what it means to be financially successful, and they don't necessarily reflect reality. But here's the thing. So I can tell you all of this material. The question is, how do you make the changes? How do you change what you're doing if you've been so used to doing certain things? So when I talk to people and they think of money as, oh, well, you know, I have to have the designer handbag. Really? Okay. I can tell you about the clients that I know of who've had millions, and most of them don't have those handbags. They just don't care. They'd rather have the investments.
Yeah. Instead of putting it in a purse. And the funny thing, Monica, what I've learned too, a lot of these ladies carry these purses and they don't have $200, $300 to even put in that bag.
Correct.
Because they're wearing it. They don't understand the power of compound interest and investing. Like, they prefer to pay their money to Michael Kors when he don't even need their money.
70% of the luxury items in this country, I read this and I haven't been able to verify it from another source, but 70% of the luxury items sold in this country were purchased by middle class and people who are middle class and below. And to me, it's sort of like, okay, why?
Why? Status
doesn't work.
It don't. They need to feel important. Like, I hope people are listening to this message and understand that they are robbing themselves of their future when they're buying these luxury items. And like, I see women with Coach bags and I'm like, can you really afford that Coach bag? But it makes them feel important. It makes them feel like they have arrived, but they will never arrive, and they'll never get to be like that couple and have millions of dollars.
Right.
Because they're throwing all their money away into material things that don't last.
Exactly. But here's the other piece about this. It's sort of, once you start learning and how to shift with it, okay, you don't want to be vulnerable. You don't want to have to make a payment for $1,200 worth of tires because you need it and say, how the heck am I going to get the money? Okay, you don't want to be in that place. I don't wish that on anybody. But the other thing that I've had to say is I've had to do financial plans for people where I've looked at the planning for individuals who made a lot of money but spent it all. And then they walk into retirement and they think, I'm going to work in retirement. Something happens and all of a sudden they're in a very ugly place. I have a business contact who does senior placements, and she has had cases where people have let their pride get in their way,
Mm-hmm.
and it's cost them placements that they've needed when they've been vulnerable medically and financially. And your heart breaks. The big issue is pride. What are you proud of? Are you proud of mastering something? Or are you proud of looking like you've mastered it because you bought something that covers it up?
Oh, Monica, that's a big deal. You bought something that covered it up.
Correct.
Someone needed to hear that.
I hope they hear it and they take it in the right spirit. I'm not attacking anybody. I'm not yelling at anybody. I'm saying it doesn't have to be like this.
Right.
And the reason why I developed the program, it's not about the fundamentals, because the fundamentals to some degree they're very easily mastered once you focus in on them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Once we take all the jargon out, once we take all the nonsense out and use just real 1 and 2 syllable words. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
A bond is an IOU, period. All right.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. You're going to get interest. You're going to get your principal back. That's what that is. A stock is a ownership piece of a company. That's it. Is it traded publicly or not? That's what that is. The problem is we have to deal with the emotional reasoning, and we have to work with changing the behavior. How do we get people to do that and to sustain that? You used to say that, you would make a habit in 21 days and then 28 days.
Mm-hmm.
Then it became like 65 days. Okay. Then it became like 90 days. And the reality is dopamine is dopamine. Okay.
Right.
So people are like, oh, dopamine's a feel-good chemical. No, not quite. It's the goal acquisition calendar.
Okay.
So what you have to do is you have to realize you can't lie to your brain. Your brain exists to do one thing: keep you alive.
Wow.
So it exists to keep you alive, and it will not let you lie to yourself when it threatens your survival. So what you have to do is work with that, set goals in a way that is reinforced and that is reasonable, and build towards it. And you have to use all the tools to reprogram your mind. Once you get to the point where you start working to reprogram the mind that this is where you need to go, and this is where you want to go, and this is in your best interest, your mind, your subconscious will help you get there. You want to kick that in, but you have to work with it and understand what the values are, what the approaches are, and where you want to go and how to do that. So that's why I developed my program. Have you ever heard of Noom for weight loss?
I have. Yes. I even researched it.
Yeah. It's a great program. They've done a great job with it. I don't know how popular it is now, but I know at one point it was very, very popular.
It was. Mm-hmm.
I hope it still is. What it does is it uses cognitive behavioral science to help people shift how they think and act and feel about health and their body and fitness and food. It does education pieces. It does coaching. And doing it that way, it helps people get to a better long-term outcome.
Okay.
They lose the weight, they keep it off, they change and they shift. It's a permanent shift. Some people can do the Weight Watchers things. Some people can do the shots and they're great. Okay?
Right.
And they're done. Some people can do hypnosis. Some people can literally read a book and they're good to go.
Right.
For the rest of us who need support, the question is, how do I give you the support? And that's what my program is based on. It's inspired by that. So yeah.
That's a good way to base your program. But before we end this, you kind of brushed over it, but I have to have you talk about it a little bit more. If you were listening, but you missed this piece, Monica is a certified financial planner.
Right.
She knows what she's doing. So you mentioned briefly where we might have people who are trying to pay off debt, but they have a small emergency fund.
Right.
Can you give them some pointers on that, whether this is safe or unsafe to do? Because, we have a financial guru. You have the small emergency fund, and you focus on paying off your debt.
Right. So it's not a hard and fast rule as to how much that emergency fund needs to be. Okay. Everybody's situation is different. And I can see, and I've seen people, like I will tell people as they approach retirement, when you're 5 years out from retirement, not only do I want to see the debt go away, what I really want to see is you build up the cash reserves.
Okay.
Why? Because if something happens and your retirement date is taken out of your hands, I don't want you going into investments before you have to.
Wow. Okay.
And in 2008, when I saw the market really correct down by about 40%, what I wanted to see people do was be able to use cash if they were close to retiring or they had retiring, they were the beginning stages, and let those assets recover. But the other piece that I would say to them, and I did say to them, is I really want you to look about the structure. Like There's a reason to have Roth accounts. There's a reason to use the pre-tax, how those things work together. And I worked very hard in the program to teach people how to use the system so that you maximize your retirement dollars at the end of the day. There are different things you can do, but that emergency fund and that debt repayment and how you manage debt, those are the two pillars of the foundation. So I'll give you a story real quick. I had a client who reached out to me. This was right before the start of the shutdown. And she was a young exec, an up-and-comer. She got involved with a financial program, and for whatever reason, what she did was she and her husband got into debt. They borrowed money from the family, paid off the debt, and they were paying back the family at an accelerated rate. So whatever the rate was that the family asked her to pay it off, she was paying it off faster. She was determined. And I said, okay, tell me about your emergency fund. None. She didn't have one. And I said, okay. She said, why do I need one? I need to pay off this debt first. I said, I really am happy you're paying off the debt, but without an emergency fund, you are vulnerable. She said, why am I vulnerable? What happens if you can't work? One or the other of you cannot work. Why would that ever happen? Okay. I said, look, here's what do you think is going to happen if something, just play with me. Car accident, whatever it is, you're short of cash. You're not going to get paid anything for a while. How do you survive? She said, I'm going to go back into debt. I said, exactly. She said, this is never going to happen. This is never going to happen. All right. So about 2 weeks after the shutdown happened, I got a call from her. She was laid off.
Oh, with no emergency fund.
With no emergency fund. Now her husband worked, don't get me wrong.
But still.
But they lived in an expensive part of the country. So what I want to see is it doesn't have to be a dollar for dollar. You have to figure it out and tailor it to you. And it really needs to be at least a multiple of how much you need to run your household for a month. And, so one of the things I used to hear was, okay, it takes for every $10,000 worth of income, this was about 20 years ago, it takes a month to look for a new job.
Right. That makes sense.
Okay. So now maybe it'd be 15,000, maybe a little bit more. It would take a month. So you need to have, how long do you think in the current conditions you would need to find a job that would meet your financial needs? That may be how much you need to have in an emergency fund. What is your monthly nut for you to keep a roof over your head, the utilities on, your car going, your insurance paid, and food on the table? What would it take for you to do that? And that's another piece. People need to be aware of that. So I have a little cheat with that, by the way. And my little cheat is most of your banks have a little toggle switch that if you flip it on, it'll tell you by category where your spending is going.
Oh, yes, it will.
And they used to say, well, you need to sit down with people and go through their bills and show them. No, I need for people to actually, I'll give them the categories. Where do you think by percent you're spending your money? And then we'll flip the switch on and say, okay, how did your estimate, your assumption match up with your reality? Where do you have a gap or an opportunity to be strategic and make changes? What would happen? Okay. And that's usually the way I want to frame it. I want them to frame it as a choice. They're choosing something better for themselves.
I like that. Choose something better for yourself.
Yeah. We have the power to do this. I see on top, you have to believe that you were created to be free. We all were.
That's right.
And it shows up in how we take care of our bodies, our minds, our emotions, our careers, our community, our money. Right. Money. There's another person that I talk about a little bit. Her name is Faith Jones. She was born into a sex cult. Her parents were in a sex cult, and she was born into it. And she managed to get a GED, get back to the States, she wound up staying with her grandmother, get into community college. And from there, she wound up getting a full ride to Georgetown University and then went to law school there. She wrote a book, and in it, she described the process by which she sort of set boundaries. She had to create boundaries, about who she was and how she was going to deal with the rest of the world. Absolutely, she had to. And I realized she had this system very much like a lawyer, and I go through this in my program. And she did this, and I realized it's like she didn't count on the fact that money is just the tool you use to take care of the body that houses the self, the awareness, and it's how you buy the things you need to take care of the body or to work to interface with other people. It's just that interface. It's just the way you get in between the different things. So if that doesn't work for you, think about it this way. You have three things. You have what you know, okay? You have the tools in your hands, and you have the people around you. So you can do something with the tools. You can hire somebody, or you can pay somebody to teach you so that you can do it.
Right.
Money is the facilitator for all three of those things. That's it. It's
Money
just
is the facilitator.
when I was in college, I'll never forget the professor pulled out a $20 bill and said, okay, visualize this. I'm like, why? It's right in front of me. I don't have to think real hard. But she said, all right, why is this worth $20? It's worth $20 because in my mind, I could think of $20 worth of stuff that I could use that $20 bill to get.
That's right.
Okay. Well, it's worth that $20 value shifts. So you have to start thinking and realizing it has value because we give it value and we use it, hopefully in a healthy way.
That's powerful. So listeners, please don't forget what Monica just said. That was pretty good. But now, Monica, you've given us so much information, valuable information, encouragement on changing our financial futures. So if we have someone that's listening and they want to reach out to you, they want to work with you, please let them know how they can find you.
Okay, so we have the website, which is theharmonywealthacademy.com. I have an email, which I'm happy to give out. I will give you a code that if somebody just mentions that they saw me here, I will give them a discount on it. We have different programs for different needs. So I'm happy to have a conversation with somebody, let them set up an appointment where we could just talk over and figure out what they need, if they need, okay? But the program is designed to teach you the system. I'm not selling you products. I want you to take a break from letting people pitch at you to sell you anything. I want you to stand back and learn so that when you are ready, you can buy what you need. You can get what you want. I want you in charge of who has the privilege to be on your team, and you're the CEO. You hire, you fire, you manage. You give direction. I want you to be empowered to do it.
Wonderful. Well, all of her information will be in our show notes. If you need someone to teach you how to hire, how to fire, please contact her. She's here because we trust her and we love her message and what she's trying to do, and we support her. Monica, thank you so much for joining us. Joining me.
Having me. This has been a pleasure. And I anytime any of your people have a question, if you have any questions, I'm happy to help.
Well, thank you. And I look forward to us hosting you again.
Thanks. Take care. I appreciate it.
Thank you. It has been lovely. Thank you.